Less than 100 years ago, if you wanted to travel overseas, then your only option was a long and arduous journey by boat. Although many of these boats were pretty nice places to be, it didn't change the fact that if you wanted to, say, travel from the UK to the US, then you would have to set aside a pretty big chunk of time. Then, of course, commercial air travel was born and the future of holidays changed forever. Although the companies responsible for providing intercontinental air travel do indeed supply a comparatively remarkable service, there are many things about these companies that you might be surprised to learn. And in today's episode, we're going to take a look at some of them. Let's get started! While presumably most people try as hard as they can to avoid using the airplane toilet, on a long-haul flight they can be difficult to avoid, especially if your airline of choice provides free alcohol. Sadly, over the years, people have used the facilities for other things than offloading surplus fluid or vomiting due to turbulence, so the door can very easily be unlocked from the outside by a member of staff. If you think about it for even a second, that makes perfect sense. Although airplane toilet doors are not of the most sturdy construction, they usually open outwards. If anybody was suffering from a genuine medical emergency, breaking down the door might prove to be a fairly difficult task. In addition, small children get stuck in locked toilets on a fairly regular basis, and it would not be financially viable to have to pay to have the door replaced or repaired every time that this happens. This information is worth bearing in mind for anybody who wishes to join the Mile High Club and has decided that the airplane bathroom would provide the necessary privacy to do so. Remember, they can open that door at any minute.
Just before we get back into today's episode, let me talk about something that is an absolute game changer in the underwear world, and that is sheath underwear. I know what you're thinking. Underwear. It's been around for a long time, but how's sheath going to be any different from me? Well, let me ask, ever find the boxer shorts too loose? Ever feel like briefs too tight? Where sheath, they fix all of that. I'm wearing a pair of sheath right now. I got a nice clean pair of sheath right here. I wear these every day. They're particularly fantastic if you're going to the gym, by the way. Just keep everything nicely in the right places. Also comfortable to sleep in, which is also nice. They have this multi-pocket system for all of your different man pieces. So your man pieces go in this dual pouch system, which keeps everything separated, cool, comfortable in the summer. It's just perfect. Also, if you're not feeling that, you could just wear them like regular underwear as well. Look, I was skeptical about this at first. Sheath sent me some. I tried them. I like them. Now it's basically all I wear. My suggestion to you, buy one pair, see if you like it, you probably will, and then you'll order more.
And for the ladies, brand new bamboo line for you as well. So go to sheathunderwear.com and get yourself the most comfortable underwear you'll ever wear. Use the promo code Sideprojects for 20% off your order. That's sheathunderwear.com, promo code Sideprojects.
Thank you to them for sponsoring, and now back to today's episode.
Running an airline is an expensive business, and as a result, these companies do all that they can to maximize profit from every trip. One of the most controversial profit maximizing practices is deliberate overbooking. This broadly works like this. The Airbus A380 usually carries 525 passengers with a maximum certified capacity of 853 if they're all really, really uncomfortable. So, even if we work with the lowest number, it's fairly unlikely that every single person booked on that flight will be there for takeoff. Being fully aware of this fact, many airlines will sell a number of seats twice and take a gamble that all will be well. Assuming the numbers work out, then there is no problem. Problems only arise if they don't. Under European law, depending on the length of your flight, you're entitled to up to £520 per passenger plus a complete refund of your ticket if you're unable to board due to overbooking. Unfortunately, what a lot of people don't know is that if you accept any sort of compensation package from the airline, such as an alternative flight, extra air miles, a small financial sweetener, etc., then you waive this right to compensation. According to flightdelayed.co.uk, a website that helps people get the compensation they're entitled to, quote, flight compensation in the event of an overbooked flight relies on the principle of denied boarding. This is why, when flight overbooking occurs, airlines first try to find volunteers to give away their seats and offer vouchers, miles, another flight, etc. If you decide to accept those and give away your seat, you are no longer entitled to flight compensation and a refund as you were not considered denied boarding. So, is this sort of underhanded, dirty business practice legal? Well, unfortunately, yeah. As long as airlines abide by the relevant country's compensation laws, they could theoretically double book the entire plane if they wanted. Obviously, doing this would not be financially viable, but overselling a certain number of seats must be, or airlines simply wouldn't do it, would they? Packing for a holiday can be stressful. Trying to fit everything you will need into a single suitcase while keeping that case within the weight restrictions of your airline can feel like the world's most boring game of Tetris. After all, nobody wants to arrive at the airport and find out their bag is 2 kilograms overweight and be faced with the choice of paying an exorbitant fee or discarding that 6th pair of emergency shoes. For a traveler with disabilities, extra luggage has the potential to become very expensive indeed. Or more accurately, it has the potential to become very expensive if your airline of choice is not forthcoming with the truth. Not only are airlines obligated to provide you with extra luggage allowance for any medicine or medical products you might need to take with you, but according to the Civil Aviation Authority, quote, you may carry up to 2 mobility items free of charge. This applies generally for your trip rather than just the flight. So if there is something specific that you need at your destination, the airline should accept it as one of the 2 pieces of mobility equipment, provided that it is a reasonable request. Basically, assuming you're not trying to get away with transporting 2 fully loaded quad bikes, you should be okay. Shockingly though, not all airlines are as forthcoming with this information as they should be. Out of the 5 websites that we looked at while researching this video, only 2 of them had not buried this information away somewhere. If you feel you need this extra allowance, do inquire about it when booking your tickets. Until comparatively recently, it was perfectly acceptable to get on a plane, wait until after takeoff, and then happily spend your time drinking alcohol and smoking cigars until it was time to land. Then, in 1996, the US government banned smoking on all flights entering or leaving the United States, ruining the fun for everybody. But you might be thinking, surely dozens of people smoking constantly inside a metal tube was really unhealthy. As non-smoking passengers, we've got to be better off now that they've put a stop to all that nonsense, right? Well, as it turns out, that's not actually the case. According to research carried out by QI, the long-running BBC television show, when people were allowed to smoke on airplanes, all of the air inside the cabin was completely replaced with fresh air every 3 minutes. When all the smoke went away, however, the air was instead replaced with a mixture of 50% fresh air and 50% recycled air. Among other things, this has led to a dramatic increase in the carbon dioxide levels within the cabin, which in turn causes far more episodes of dizziness and nausea. But it gets worse. Because the cabin environment is replaced far fewer times throughout the flight, the levels of airborne pathogens have sharply risen. If all of that wasn't bad enough, instances of air rage have increased dramatically since the smoking ban was introduced.
Right. But it's a bad idea because the health of the passengers suffers enormously as a result.
But just how have airlines managed to capitalize on all of this? Well, according to the same report, replacing the air less often has resulted in an average 6% reduction in fuel consumption. If you spread that saving out over a year, you're looking at a serious chunk of change, and as we mentioned earlier, airlines are usually more interested in profit than customer comfort. Before the 11th of September 2001, security in airports and onboard aircraft was, if not lax, then certainly far less intense than it is now. Following the events of that fateful day, things understandably changed rapidly, and there are now some security measures in place that most people don't even know about. One of those measures is the inclusion of undercover sky marshals on many flights. Although these marshals have been around since the late 1960s, they are much more prevalent today. So, what's the deal? Well, according to howstuffworks.com, an air marshal is a federal agent disguised to look like a regular passenger. Each air marshal is authorized to carry a gun and make arrests. There are not enough air marshals to cover every flight, so their assignments are kept secret. No one knows which passenger is the air marshal, or even if an air marshal is present on the flight at all. Although their exact numbers are kept classified, airline insiders estimate that only 5% of US flights have an air marshal on board. This is still a major increase from the years before 9/11, when a handful of marshals guarded just a few international flights. The quote ends. It's not just random passengers who might be equipped to take down the bad guys either. Some pilots are also authorized to carry a firearm. According to uponarriving.com, quote, the Federal Flight Deck Officers program is run by the Federal Air Marshal Service, which is under the TSA DHS. It allows pilots, navigators, or flight engineers on passenger or cargo aircraft to volunteer for special training and provides them with the authority to carry and use a gun on a plane. Once the training is complete, it allows the volunteer pilots to be deputized as federal law enforcement officers. Even with this special dispensation, a gun-toting pilot is still under more restrictions than a fully qualified air marshal. For example, whereas an air marshal may use their weapon anywhere on the plane, the pilot is not allowed to take his or hers off the flight deck. In addition to all this potential firepower, every member of the cabin crew undergoes extensive combat training. This training includes, but is not limited to, using anything at hand as an effective weapon and learning the most effective way to gouge an opponent's eyes out. So, next time you're thinking of engaging in a bit of air rage because your food is cold or your steward has refused you another alcoholic beverage, just bear in mind that you might get way more than you bargained for. In spite of what you may have heard, there are actually very few hard and fast rules about what airlines must do in the event of an in-flight death outside of alerting the proper authorities so that the body can be collected upon landing. Fortunately or not, most airlines have agreed to a sort of unofficial set of protocols so that the situation can be handled as smoothly as possible. Firstly, no matter how obviously dead the person appears, they will only be presumed dead unless there is a doctor on board. According to Condé Nast Traveler, quote, "If there aren't any doctors in the cabin, an unconscious, unbreathing, unresponsive passenger is only presumed dead." But what is the flight crew supposed to do with this presumed dead person? According to many articles on the subject, it is often said that the body is supposed to be stored in one of the airplane's toilets, but that's not actually the case. The unofficial guidelines state that the presumed deceased should be moved to a seat where there are few or no nearby passengers. If the flight is full, and this is where it gets a bit uncomfortable, the person may be returned to their original seat, the seat put in the upright position, and the seatbelt or other equipment used to hold the body in place. It is also recommended to close the eyes and cover the... It is also recommended to close the eyes and cover the body up to the neck with a blanket if a body bag is not available. While we understand that space on a fully loaded aircraft is limited, we can't imagine that many passengers would feel comfortable sitting next to a deceased person for the remainder of their flight. And this brings us to another widely believed falsehood. Although a flight might be diverted to the nearest airport for a medical emergency, once a person is deceased, or at least presumed to be deceased, it is no longer considered an emergency, so the flight will usually continue on to its original destination. After all, it's not like landing as quickly as possible is going to be helpful to anyone, except the passenger now sat next to a presumed dead body. Imagine, if you will, the following scenario. You've been planning and saving for your trip for over a year, and today is the day. You're finally going to spend some quality time with your loved ones, drinking cocktails under a palm tree on the beach in the sun. The car is packed, you have all your documentation, and you're leaving in plenty of time to make your flight. Unfortunately, as you're driving along the highway, a container truck full of suitcases jackknifes in front of you, blocking the road for several hours. As you sprint, movie style, through the airport, you glimpse the taillights of the flight you were supposed to be on disappearing over the horizon. Now, your holiday is ruined. Or is it? Well, that depends on your airline. Many carriers, including American, Delta, and United, have what is commonly referred to as a flat tire policy. Basically, the clue is in the name. If a passenger misses their flight by less than 2 hours because of circumstances outside of their control, the airline will put them on standby for the next flight, absolutely free of charge. Obviously, paying customers will have priority here, but it's genuinely nice to discover that some carriers have at least one policy designed for the convenience of their passengers. Much like the rules in place to help travelers with disabilities, many airlines that have a flat tire policy don't exactly advertise it on their homepages. According to one travel agent who kindly spoke to us during the research for this video, it might not prominently be advertised, but the majority of reputable airlines do have some sort of flat tire policy in place, although it may not specifically be called that. The best thing you can do if you miss your flight is to speak nicely to a member of the ground crew, and the chances are they will be able to make alternative arrangements for you. Sometimes this is free of charge, and sometimes there's a small additional fee.